Alright, next, we'll move on to designing the server settings page together. It will be a menu page, used for configuring the connection to the database itself. Okay, I'll show an example of the original project first. So, this is the project. This page here. We've already downloaded various icons. This page will resemble the menu page. Let's go and have a look. It will be somewhat similar to the line notify settings page. Therefore, we can directly copy various controls from the line notify settings page and use them here. Okay, let's continue together. Open our project. Then, add another tab page. Just click Add Tab here. And it will arrange it at the end like this. We've prepared the icons, right? The database icon. Add it to the image list. Click Choose Images, then, Add. I've selected this icon, where you can use other icons that convey the same meaning, such as an icon representing storage. It's up to your preference. I'm using this icon, an image representing the database. Double-click to select it. Then click OK once more. Next, let's configure the settings for the last tab page, named Tab Page 5. First, select Tab Control 1. Go to the Tab Pages collection, and click the button with 3 dots. Let's modify the properties of the latest tab page, named Tab Page 5. Click Alphabetical to arrange them from A to Z. Go to the Text property. We'll change the old text from Tab Page 5 to Server Settings. Like this. Then, let's change the icon here in the image key. Select the database image, and you'll have a beautiful tab page. Now, let's see if there are any properties we need to configure additionally. For the name property, we're keeping the original Tab Page 5, we didn't change it. In summary, we only changed the text and image key properties. When everything is set, click OK. Next, let's go to the server settings page. Click on an empty area. In the properties window, you'll see Tab Page 5. Change the back color property from transparent to white. This is to prevent the edges of the controls we'll drag and drop into this tab page from being black. So, before designing the form, let's change the background color of the tab page. Then, go to the line notify menu we designed. Simply copy all the controls, and paste them into the server settings menu. After that, let's change the text from the original name, line notify settings, to server connection settings. Like this. Moving on, let's change the name and text properties of all the controls we copied from the line notify settings. I recommend using names and text that align with the values of the connection string used to connect to the database. For the switch control with the text enable, I've named it Enable Connection Switch. This switch allows us to enable or disable the program's interaction with the database. When it's turned off, the program won't operate with the database. This might be useful in cases where there's no internet connection, like when using an online database without Wi-Fi or internet. Keeping this switch off allows the program to continue functioning without trying to connect to the database, displaying a notification message indicating the inability to establish a database connection. For other controls, let me show you an example from the original project for quick reference. There will be labels for port, database, server, username, and password. Starting with the label controls, for port and database. I'll change the text property of these controls to port and database, respectively. For this control, is it username or server? Let me see an example from the original project first. It's server here. And there's another label added here. Copy one label and place it here. Then change the text property to server. For this label, change the text to username, and the last label should be changed to password. The reason I've changed the texts of all these labels first, is to avoid switching windows to look at the original project, to determine what all the text box controls in this page should be named. Next, let's change the name property of all text box controls. Starting with this one, it'll be port text box. And the hint text will be port. Next, database text box. After changing the name, update the hint property to database. Following that, this text box will be renamed to server text box. The hint text for this will be server. Is this text box tall? Let's adjust one property. Change use tall size, from true to false. This will set the height to match the other controls, using the default height. We can change positions and adjust sizes as needed. Moving on to username text box. Let's modify the name property first. Then change the hint text to username. Lastly, password text box. After renaming, update the hint text to password, in sequence. Don't forget this important property here, use system password char. We need to write code to set this property for the text box, to display symbols for the password instead of plain text. However, we won't adjust it directly in the properties window here, as sometimes it might not work. Let's keep the default value as false for now. We'll write the code for this control later, when the program starts running. This button will be named Show Password button, used to show or hide the password. Label the button as Show. This button is for saving the connection string. I've named it Save Server Settings button. The text on the button should be Save Settings. Let's now check for any details we need to note. How are the anchor properties set for this card? Ensure it's set to top, left, and right. I recommend checking the anchor properties for all controls, because we want all controls to resize according to the form size, aiming for a design that's close to responsive design, as much as possible. Before testing the program, let's double-check if any control properties are incorrectly set. Alright, let's save all the changes, and then click Start to test our project. Now, go to the server settings page. And we'll have a beautifully designed page like this. Let's test if the program can resize responsively, similar to the history page. Try clicking Maximize. It works well, because we copied all controls from the line Notify Settings page, where appropriate properties were already set. Now, try Restore to return the window back to its initial size. Works fine as well. We might need several tests here. One crucial point to remember is setting the Use System Password char property, for password text box. Here, we need to set it to true using code. When the program opens, the text should display as password symbols. Next, let's check the example from token text box, on the line Notify Settings page. We can show or hide text as password format by clicking there. However, we haven't set this property for password text box yet. We'll write the code for it later. Now, let's go to the form, right-click in the empty space, and select View Code. Next, let's search for a command by pressing Ctrl and F simultaneously. A search box will appear. Search for the term Initialize component. I'll move the Properties window down for now since it's blocking our code. Type the search term Initialize component again. Normally, when Visual Studio finds the command we're looking for, it jumps to that line automatically. If the search doesn't find anything, we might need to change the search scope from the drop-down menu. In this case, are we searching in the current project? Change it to current document instead. Now, test the search again. Can you see it? If Visual Studio finds the typed word, it will automatically focus on that line. I'll move the Properties window to the right. Next, let's write code to set properties for text boxes. Type the command anywhere within the curly braces. Notice the line public print crcode barcode below the Initialize component method. This is where we can set properties for all the form and controls. I'll scroll down, and I'll type the command here as an example. Start by typing the text box name. The command we'll use here is password text box use system password char equals true. This is how we write code to set properties instead of using the properties window. The reason is, as I mentioned earlier, it's not working properly. I'll show you in the properties window. To recap, if we set the use system password char property to true, through the properties window, it won't work. This applies only to some properties. Therefore, we need to use code to achieve this. Once done, save all changes and test the project by clicking Start. Go to the Server Settings page. Try typing some text. Can you see it? It appears as a password symbol now. Now, I'll test typing text in each text box. Once done, press the Tab key on the keyboard. If pressing Tab moves the cursor to the next control, it means it works properly. I'll test it again to make sure the program works correctly. If it doesn't meet the requirements, we can make additional settings. First, select a control and then set the tab index sequence consecutively. The numbers shouldn't be repeated, for instance, 18, 19, 20, 21, and so on. Let me provide an example. Here's the sequence, 23 and 24, like this. When reaching the last sequence, the program loops back to the first tab index. Save it and test it again. Go to the Server Settings page and press Tab to check if the cursor moves correctly. Oh, it seems like we missed a sequence here. Let me check it again. Found it. We entered the sequence incorrectly. Here, 24 should be 23. The Show button should be 24. And the Save Settings button should be 25. Let's test the project again. Go to the Server Settings page as before and press Tab again. Sometimes, designing forms requires attention to detail. We might need to test several times. This is to ensure the program works efficiently and is user-friendly. Okay, that's all for this lecture. We'll continue with the next lecture. Thank you very much.